everybody, and welcome to the weekly scopes from the 22nd of June to the 28th of June. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellational Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year, and Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra-parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination, either both planets are on the north side side, or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contra-parallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contra-parallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contra-parallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contra-parallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contra-parallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contra-parallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contra-parallels and parallels are. So this week we've got a few aspects again influencing us. So we have the Sun making a parallel to Jupiter. This is exact on the 28th of June and leaves on the 17th of July. So it's going to last us for just like 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks. Yeah, and this entered on the 26th of May and was exact on the 14th of June. Also exact again this week on the 28th, the last day of this week, but also going into the next couple of weeks, right? Mercury makes a contra-parallel to Pluto, and Mercury's in Cancer and Pluto's in Capricorn, and this is exact on the 22nd of June at 10:46 a.m. Mars makes a sextile to Jupiter. This entered on the 19th of June, is exact on the 22nd of June, and leaves us on the 25th of June. Jupiter makes a quincunx to Pluto. This entered on the 20th of June, is exact at 7:14 a.m. on the 24th of June, and Jupiter's still in Gemini and Pluto's still in Capricorn. Mars makes a parallel to Chiron, and Mars is in Leo and Chiron's in Aries. And this is exact at 3:25 a.m. on the 25th of June and leaves on the 3rd of July. And the Sun makes a sextile to Mars. This is exact on the 26th of June at 3:11 p.m. enters on the 24th of June and leaves us on the 29th of June, right? So yeah. So the Sun's parallel to Jupiter and the Sun sextile to Mars is allowing us this week to find the perfect balance between identity, which is represented by the Sun, right, and action, which is represented by Mars, our motivation drive, yeah. And it gives us these energies, the Sun sextile to Mars and the Sun's parallel to Jupiter, allows us to go after our goals with unwavering, unmovable, unshakable confidence this week. And this creative fire energy helps us shine in our self-expression this week. But the sadder side of these aspects is that we may come across a little bit too extra and be too overconfident, and this can lead to scattered energy, impulsive words and actions, overstepping people's boundaries, all of that stuff. So the best use of this energy is always to channel it into productive products, especially those that require courage and being brave and being optimistic. Tasks that require a bit more creativity rather than tasks that are too overly logical and require technicalities or precision, although you can use this energy for that, but this energy is best used to, do the things that are a bit outside of your comfort zone. That's my advice anyway. And Mars's sextile to Jupiter and parallel to Chiron is kind of like a Seth kiss this week, adding that energy where we can mix action and growth, right? And again, it adds to us being courageous, especially in the way that we think, and being optimistic enough to chase our dreams and to focus on the things we want to focus on. It also expands our capacity for being brave, right? And we may just, get lucky breaks if we just take the initiative to start something new. So this week we can make our own luck with these energies, right? And Mars' parallel to Chiron activates the wounded warrior archetype this week, which allows us to heal through brave action rather than avoidance, transform pain into purposeful courage, confront where we've been holding back due to past hurts. Karmically, these Mars aspects allow us to work through past life patterns around assertion and healing. The spiritual lesson this week is that true courage includes acknowledging vulnerability. Mercury's contra-parallel to Pluto allows us to think and research deeply this week, It can give us penetrating insights that reveal hidden truths and secrets. With Mercury in Cancer opposing Pluto's intensity in Capricorn, this can also lead to power struggles in communication, obsessive thinking patterns that need conscious management, and this aspect is low-key perfect for shadow work and psychological exploration. Karmically, we are dealing with how you have wielded your power or surrendered mental power in past lives when you weren't meant to, or overused, abused your power, or allow others to take away your sense of self, or you may have given up what you truly think for the greater good sometimes, or sometimes for the detriment of yourself. So ultimately the spiritual opportunities here this week to transform your thought patterns at their root core, get into the core of your beliefs, especially your toxic beliefs, the beliefs that hold you back, right? And continue the work of, or starting the work of, managing them, understanding them and releasing them, and building more positive energies into your life, right? Jupiter's quincunx to Pluto creates an awkward adjustment, switch up, fine tuning energy where we need to find the balance between growing and transformation, right? And staying in our comfort zone. So we may have to let something die, release something before we can grow, this week. And our relationships can need a reset this week, or our relationship with authority and power and self-empowerment. And relationships may need a reset how we think about relating to ourselves and others, how we allow others to be energy draining in our lives and toxic, or how we're energy draining and toxic in other people's life. It allows us to find the balance between knowledge and transformation. Are you just gathering information for the sake of it, without actually using it and applying it in your life to grow, And this aspect of Jupiter's quincunx to Pluto creates tension between our optimism and the necessary endings that we need to grow, right? Esoterically, it represents Jupiter's light attempting to illuminate Pluto's underworld, and the karmic lesson involves learning healthy boundaries around power and growth, So the combined wisdom for this week supports brave healing action backed by us being optimistic, right? And we have to remember that psychological growth can come this week through balancing confidence without being too arrogant, deep insight without being obsessive, healing action without reopening wounds, or being scared to open wounds, because sometimes we have to go through the pain to get to the positives, right? So this is a spiritual invitation to align our actions with a higher purpose while being willing to transform at the deepest level this week. For the best results, channel this fiery transformative energy into creative projects that require courage, healing conversations that confront deeper truths, and remember that being brave, starting new things, and aligning that with being authentic in our self-expression, right? And conscious release of what no longer serves us can lead to growth. And remember that these transits are temporary teachers, not permanent definers of our experience, and we should work with them intentionally and unlock our highest potential this week, and this will be our spiritual power. So my mantras and guidance for this week are based on the majority of energies that you have in your natal chart. So some of you may have natal charts that are dominant in more than one energy. You may have your rising sign, your sun sign, and your moon sign all in different energies. You may have aspects to different planets. So ultimately this could mean you have some planets that are in fire, some in water signs, some in earth signs. So for example, if you have most of your planets in Aries, Scorpio and Capricorn, read the mantras for all of these signs. And if you have all your planets mostly in Taurus, read the mantra for Taurus, but you may also want to read for Libra because Venus rules Taurus and Libra, right? So yeah, this week's guidance for Aries is that Venus in Aries is pushing you to step into your passion fearlessly, even when it feels like a cosmic tug of war. Embrace, be open to brave moves while keeping that spark, that motivation grounded in authenticity and reality, right? Taurus, with the moon entering your sign this week, take a moment to savor life's simple pleasures and nurture yourself and others. Let the steady Taurus energy guide you into deeper and authentic self-care and calm determination. Gemini, with the Sun and Jupiter parallel in your sign this week, it's like a megaphone for your voice. Speak out, say your story, and ride a wave of expanded self-expression. Keep your curiosity alive and balance optimism with a touch of practicality. Cancer, Mercury's deep dive into your watery realm invites you to express your feelings with clarity and compassion. Use this week's introspective energy to nurture the bonds that matter the most and let intuition flow freely. Leo, Mars in your radiant sign motivates your creative courage, pushing you to transform past aches and pains into powerful stories of triumph, getting over adversities and challenges, right? Step into your spotlight with confidence, but be mindful of overreacting when impulsivity strikes, Virgo, even if you feel pulled between precision and overthinking, let the cosmic currents remind you that growth comes from softening your rigid routines. Use today's reflective vibes to streamline your inner conversations and focus on daily self-improvement, right? Libra, as Venus dances in Aries against Saturn and Neptune's dreamy influence in Pisces, practice balancing your heart's desires with a dose of realism. Seek relationships and creative plans that nurture both beauty and honesty in your world this week. Scorpio, Pluto's transformative push and Jupiter's quincunx urge you, pushes you this week to face power struggles and embrace, be open to the necessary endings that this week may bring, allowing this deep energy to heal old wounds and guide you toward a more empowered expression of your true self. Sagittarius, Jupiter's expansion in Gemini brings fresh opportunities to challenge your beliefs and explore new territories, Be open to growth and a sense of adventure, and also open to collaborating, rethinking, resetting your philosophical views along the way this week. Capricorn, with Pluto's transformative shadow mingling with your, steadfast, determined energy, the cosmos is inviting you to reset, power structures, power routines, your sense of authority in both your relationships and life. faith, trust in your inner authority, let go of outdated goals and build new grounded goals and ambitions, Aquarius, the North Node soul level connection with Venus lights up your path for innovative relationship growth and unconventional ideas. Stay true to your visionary nature by aligning your actions with both heart and higher purpose this week. Saturn and Neptune in your dreamy realm, call for a delicate balance between discipline and intuition. Honor your sensitivity this week by establishing gentle boundaries while letting your creative, empathetic gifts shine through this week, So in terms of what content you should listen to or create this week, with the distinctive blend of expressive fire and air coming together this week being the main energies, it wants us to have brave and courageous storytelling and be open in the ideas that we listen to or create, right? So it's great for content listening to or creating tutorial content that showcases your unique expertise or teaching style, brave, optimistic messaging that inspires your audience to expand their horizons, storytelling that weaves personal growth journeys with practical wisdom, content that bridges intellectual concepts with creative application. Mercury and Pluto Contra-Parallels as a psychological depth that's perfect for investigating hidden truths or taboo topics with sensitivity. Mercury in Cancer brings emotional intelligence, transformative stories with before and after elements, content exploring shadow work or personal reinvention, with Mars making the power to Chiron in fire signs. Authenticity and vulnerability becomes our superpower, right? So it allows us to share how we've overcome obstacles in our creative journey, creating content about turning wounds into wisdom, exploring themes of resilience through self-expression and healing through action. Jupiter's quincunx to Pluto explores tension between growth and power, so it's perfect for content about managing success, going after success, getting back up after failure and stuff like that, as well as, as I said, going after success, especially when staying true to our values. So content creators, you can ask yourself how sharing your personal healing journey or your life story in general, and if so, what would be the bravest, most Jupiter expansive content you could create right now. Also, you can ask yourself, what truth are you ready to communicate that could transform both you and your audience right now? So yeah, on the 22nd of June, the moon enters its balsamic moon phase at 5:13 a.m. The moon void of course also starts at 6:02 a.m. Venus makes a semi-square to Saturn at 7:16 a.m. and Mercury's contra-parallel to Pluto happens at 10:47 a.m. right? Mars also makes a sextile to Jupiter at 11:32 a.m. Mercury enters Cancer at 4:59 p.m. and the moon also enters Taurus at 6:34 p.m. as well, and the sun also makes a square to Saturn at 7:36 p.m. and then Venus also makes a semi-square to Neptune at 8:01 today. So as we can see, there's a lot going on, and we've got Mercury in Cancer while this is happening, Pluto's in Capricorn, Mars is in Leo, Jupiter's in Gemini, the sun is also in Gemini as well, Saturn's in Pisces, and Venus is in Aries and Neptune's in Pisces as well, right? So that's the energy we're dealing with today. So the balsamic moon and the void of course allows us to surrender, release and prepare for new beginnings. Think of it as astrological composting, breaking down the old to fertilize what comes next. We're getting ready, for the rebirth that can happen after the new moon. Though, as I said, when the moon's void of course, we may feel like we're swimming in spiritual limbo, but ultimately this is a good period for meditation, self-reflection, deep thinking. It may not be a good time for some of you to start new things, but it is perfect for spiritual practices, completing old business, rest, but the challenge is you can feel directionless, you can be low in physical energy. And this phase correlates with Lord Shiva's energy of disillusion, letting go. Venus is semi-square to Saturn and Neptune. We can kind of like have a sort of squeeze, push and pull between the planets of limitation and illusion. Saturn, limitation, Neptune, illusion. Our relationships, goals and financial desires can face a reality check right now, while simultaneously being clouded by confusion as well. Venus and Saturn brings romantic financial frustration, and we can just feel unappreciated, or people may feel unappreciated by us in relationships. Venus's Neptune energy adds uncertainty about what you truly want and disappointment. So the combined effect of this energy is like the universe asking us to mature our approach to pleasure and relationships while maintaining healthy boundaries. So again, it's giving us to check our expectations and what is actual reality right about now. Our heart may want what it wants, Venus in Aries, but astrologically forces are asking us, but is it real, and have you earned what you want, because sometimes we want a lot in life and we haven't put in the work, the inner work, the shadow work to have that perfect relationship that we're seeking, right? Mercury's contra-parallel to Pluto, and Mercury entering Cancer, right, allows our mind to get deep, supporting the deep aspects that I talked about at the beginning of the week. And our mind can also be very emotional because Mercury in Cancer as well. So, Mercury's being influenced by Pluto, the planet as transformation and depth, and Mercury's entering a moon-ruled sign, right? So this Mercury-Pluto effect brings to the day, adds to us being able to have penetrating deep insights, but you can also give obsessive thinking. But we can also have power struggles in our communications, but it can be good to have conversations and move people, say the words that need to have impact, have those conversations you've been putting off, telling those secrets that at first may seem like horrible, but in the end is clearing that air for emotional depth. With Mercury entering Cancer, it adds emotional reasoning. We can be protective in our communication style, and our words can carry unusual psychological weight today. So ultimately, this combo helps us see beneath surface level issues, but we may struggle to express these insights without emotional colouring. Our thoughts are literally going from, let me analyse this logically, but how does it feel, so we have to find the balance between, yes, express our emotions, but try and do it in a way that doesn't cause too much conflict and confusion to yourself and others. Mars' set star to Jupiter adds to this week's confidence, optimism, expanded energy, lucky opportunities. So it's best for taking brave action on learning projects, creative projects, and gives us the courage to go after growth. This transit is the universe saying, just do it, but make it lucky, give it your best shot, take the risk that you've been thinking about, especially when it comes to leadership, creativity, or educational research projects, Saturn square to Saturn brings some more challenge to the next couple of days, right? We may have, restrictions with our sense of self and expression of self today, and Saturn's here to give us those reality checks that we much need this week, Again, this can add to the feelings of limitation, add to us, having challenges with those in authority, but ultimately Saturn's wanting us to build long-lasting routines and structures for self-expression. And ultimately Saturn square to the Sun can just make it feel like when we're telling our story, someone keeps interrupting with, but have you considered the consequences? But that's Saturn's job, right? To make us look at what we want and are experiencing from all angles, and sort of like helping us have that grounding and planning. It can be frustrating, but ultimately it helps us build something more lasting and meaningful, and our ego may take a hit, but our character can get stronger. And the moon entering Taurus allows us to ground our emotions in the material world, and this helps us have a sense of stability regardless of today's challenges. choices. It helps us to be more emotionally steady and balanced, be more practical in our thinking, bringing that sensual awareness and common sense, helping us find the balance between finding simple pleasures, making those financial decisions, and meeting the needs of our physical and sexual comforts, But it can add to the stubbornness and the resistance to the necessary changes that need to be made this week. So some questions that can help you reflect on today is, how can I use today's balsamic moon energy to consciously release what no longer is serving me? Where is Saturn asking me to grow in matters of love or self-expression? Can you identify an area where Mars's Jupiter energy could help you take a brave, expansive step forward? Notice when your communication changes towards emotional protection, which is represented by Mercury going into Cancer, right? And what triggers this? And how can you meet these needs in a healthy way? And when has limitation, represented by Saturn, ultimately led to a more authentic expression of yourself in your life, reflecting on your life and thinking about the things that you may have wanted but didn't get, but may in the long term have made sense and been for the best of your overall well-being, and just remember, astrological tensions aren't punishments, but they are growth opportunities, and today's energy offers a rare chance to mature our desires, deepen our thinking, and take confident action despite limitations. And ultimately prepare good strategies for life. And this is why I do these sort of like readings, to help you live the best lives you can. On the 23rd of June, Mars is quincunx to Pluto is exact at 6 a.m. today. The moon enters void of course at 9:26 a.m. Sun makes its square to Neptune at 9:29 a.m. and Venus is semi-square to Jupiter is exact at 7:05 p.m. So Mars's quincunx allows us to sort of like experience Mars's courage and the sadiery underwear forces of Pluto, right? So our personal will and creative expression must somehow adjust to accommodate our deeper needs, whether that be needs of others or, something going out of place in your routine today, and without fully dominating others or dominating yourself. So using this energy but not letting it overtake you today. But you can feel like your actions keep missing the mark despite your best efforts. Creative projects may hit mysterious roadblocks that are beyond your control, and power struggles could come up where your ego-driven desires clash with deeper currents of, you needing to do shadow inner work to look after your inner child, right? Sexual energy and creative force may feel intensely powerful yet difficult to channel appropriately, and ultimately this energy is asking us, how can we assert our individual will while respecting the deeper transformative currents that are at play here, And the best way to do this is to adjust your approach rather than forcing your way forward or completely surrendering your power. Think of it as learning to surf, deal with, navigate massive waves and unexpected changes and behaviours and events, rather than fighting against them or being passively swept away with them, The Sun square to Neptune adds to the fog and cloudiness and misjudgment of this week. Our sense of self and mental clarity can become clouded by dreams and fantasies and illusions. We can ignore those red flags. Information can become unreliable. Fact and fiction can blur in confusing ways, so it's important to fact check, right? Spiritual inspiration can come through, but so can deception, and especially self-deception, and our imagination is supercharged, but our practical focus can take a major hit. So ultimately this transit is basically Mercury's retrograde spiritual cousin, creating confusion, not in communication or technology, but in your very sense of reality and identity. So we have to make sure we double check facts, be skeptical of too good to be true offers, and remember that inspiration and delusion can look surprisingly similar under this influence. Venus is semi-square to Jupiter can, add to the irritation of this week, adding to the tension between our desire nature, what we want to pleasure ourselves, right, and growth opportunities. We may feel torn between pursuing our personal desires, like spending our rent money on that bag or that shoe or that item, that game, what you want, or expanding your horizons, you know, going to work so you can pay your bills and pay for that course that you're doing or plan for your future, you know. And social connections may feel both appealing and slightly overwhelming right now, and there's a tendency to overindulge or promise more than you can deliver in relationships. Financial optimism may need a reality check before making commitments. This energy brings a yes but energy to relationships and pleasures. Yes, it's okay to enjoy and grow, but maintain some boundaries and reality testing. The enthusiasm is real but needs tempering with practicality. So some questions that can help with your self-reflection and grounding today are: where in your life are you trying to force your will, which is represented by Mars, against deeper currents that require a more nuanced, you know, sensitive approach? You know, maybe someone's going through a hard time and you're trying to force them to do things that they're not ready to, or someone may be trying to force you to do things you're not ready for, you know. And how might today's dreamy void of moon actually be protecting you from making decisions in the astrological fog of Sun Neptune energy that can make it harder for us to make decisions when they're squaring right? Can you identify situations where you are seeing what you want to see rather than seeing what's actually there? And how might your current relationships or financial desires be slightly out of alignment with, you know, your broader growth plan? Because a lot of the times, you know, we have a life plan, but our day-to-day spending habits and lifestyle habits get in the way of that, you know. And if we just remember that challenging transits are opportunities for greater awareness, today's energy isn't about action altogether, you know, but it's more about perception, how you think things, and fine-tuning how you see things and go about getting what you want. Sometimes the universe makes things foggy so you can slow down and notice what you're missing, right? On the 24th of June, Jupiter makes its exact quincunx to Pluto, which I talked about this week. It's one of the main influences governing us this week, and it's exact at 7:15 a.m. Mercury square to Chiron is exact at 8:17 a.m. and this just lasts for a couple of days. The Sun's quincunx to Pluto lasts us for a few days as well, and is exact at 1:59 p.m. and the Sun's conjunction to Jupiter, which is active for the next couple of days as well, it says that at 4:16 p.m. right? So Mercury square to Chiron reminds us that our words have power and have the power to heal or destroy today. It causes a call of testimony, of a friction, of pain, of confusion between our mind and our vulnerable spots, you know. Communication around our emotional wounds can feel especially triggering. Old narratives about our self-worth may surface unexpectedly via conversation and just inward feelings. And the gift here is to learn or to tap in to consciousness and becoming aware of how your thinking patterns connect to your core wounds. Sometimes it's our thoughts that we have that can just make us feel like we keep on reliving our past, so we just have to build healthy thoughts. But before we can do that, sometimes we have to deal with the pain rather than numbing ourselves to it. The challenge is avoiding defensive communication or emotional spiraling. In Jungian terms, your wounded inner child may be driving your rental car today, so you know, child driving a car doesn't really work out well, you know. So we should ask ourselves what our emotional triggers are revealing and where we still need healing, especially in our communication style. The Sun's conjunction to Jupiter adds to the confidence and optimism of this week, supercharging it once again. We can have luck around our sense of self-expression and identity, so this helps us overcome Mercury square to Chiron, right? Helps us deal with that opportunity by increasing our confidence and giving us opportunities for growth. We just have to watch out for overconfidence or promising more than we can deliver. So this is a good energy to do things that require us to be technical, intellectual, or to be extremely focused and concentrate, right? So we can ask ourselves what vision or project could benefit from this supercharged confident boost. And when the moon enters Gemini, our emotions can become more intellectualized and communicative. Curiosity and flexibility characterizes our mood, and our social connections can become more nourishing and fulfilling right now, and our emotional intelligence can also go up as well. So it's a good energy for conversation, reading and writing and solving problems, you know. So ultimately, you know, today's energy brings expansion and transformation, wounding and healing, confidence and power struggles, and we have to find a balance between that, right? So we can channel the Sun's Jupiter optimism into projects that require both confidence and flexibility, use Mercury's and Chiron energy to heal old communication wounds rather than reopening them, allow Pluto's quincunxes to show us where we need to release control and allow growth, you know, and the Gemini moon can help us with learning something new. And, you know, just ask yourself how you can consciously work today's complex energies and work with them rather than unconsciously being worked by them and guided by them, you know. Thinking about what area of your life feels ripe is good for both expansion and transformation at this time, right? On the 25th of June, Mars's power to Chiron is exact at 3:25 a.m. and this leaves us on the 3rd of June, and I talked about this earlier this week, and there's a super new moon in Gemini, right? So the super new moon, I've done a separate audio on this so you can check it out, but it allows us to start fresh conversations or educational projects, plant seeds for writing projects or social connections, change, refresh our approach to gathering information, you know. And as it's a super new moon, means that the moon's closer to the earth, so its manifestation power is amplified, right? And it can be like a refresh button for our mental space, allowing us to gather information and be open to different perspectives on lingering problems that can help us solve relationship issues or emotional issues, right? But we just need to watch out for information overload or scattered thinking, saying yes to too many new opportunities and possibilities, overthinking rather than feeling your emotions, and just having surface level connections rather than depth, you know. Some questions we can ask ourselves today is, how might our current actions heal ancient wounds we've carried since childhood or other times in our life? In what ways can we use Gemini's gift of curiosity to explore our pain with fresh eyes? What brave new beginning in communication could help you express what's been trapped in your heart? And what story are you finally ready to rewrite about yourself? On the 26th of June, Mercury makes a sextile to Uranus at 10:45 a.m. The Sun makes a sextile to Mars at 3:12 p.m. The Moon enters void of course at 4:08. Venus makes a sextile to the Moon's North Node at 6:48 p.m. The Moon enters Cancer at 9:10 p.m. So Mercury's sextile to Uranus allows us and adds to intuitive thinking this week. Ideas that feel both emotionally resonant and revolutionary can appear today, and this helps us connect beautifully with practical innovation represented by Uranus in Taurus, you know, and communication can become more authentic, original and aligned with your true self. It allows us to think outside of the box while remaining grounded, and we may have sudden insights about emotional patterns or family vibes, relationships and behaviours that are holding us back, and gives us those light bulb moments that can help us sort of like move forward, right, you know. And our conscious mind is receiving messages from our higher self that just can help us create the space to capture innovative ideas and allow them to flow through us today, giving us positive solutions. The Sun sextile to Mars creates a kind of testimony of friendship vibe between our core identity and our action drive. Our confidence and vitality, Mars and Sun ray are working together, making us more courageous. It also allows us to be more creative in our self-expression, and we can just be more mentally flexible and be more passionate about our life today. So today's energy supports any plans that require both intelligence and courage. With the Sun in Mercury's sign and Mars in the Sun sign, there's a beautiful reciprocal energy exchange that increases our ability to communicate with conviction and act with clarity, right? So you can ask yourself, what brave action have you been hesitating to take that could benefit from today's astrological courage boost if you go ahead, right? And Venus is set star to the moon's north node, gives us a karmic growth opportunity, allowing us to have opportunities in our relationship for growth that is in line with our true needs and wants, and it gives us the ability to look for fresh solutions in our relationship problems, and our personal values can align with our higher purpose, and it gives us the opportunity to go after or maintain relationships that support our authentic path forward, which is the main theme of this week, doing the things that are really staying in line with our highest purpose and staying true to ourselves. So we can ask ourselves which relationships in our life feel aligned with who we really are, rather than who we've been. So ultimately, for the best results, we should schedule some time for creative thinking today, and be more decisive in our action as we move into the afternoon. And it's a great time for relationship building in the early evening and self-nurturing activities late at night, and asking yourself how you can work intentionally with today's supportive energies to advance both your immediate goals and your soul's journey, and what area of your life can benefit most from this harmonious astrological weather, what's wanting us to grow, be more authentic, nourish ourselves and others emotionally, and pay attention to our emotional and family life, although it can bring challenges to these areas, asking yourself how we can grow through them. On the 27th of June, there's nothing to report. On the 28th of June, Mercury makes a trine to Saturn at 4:53 a.m. Mercury makes a trine to Neptune at 12:58 p.m. The Sun's parallel to Jupiter is exact at 8:09 p.m. and I talked about that earlier this week. And the Moon enters its crescent moon phase at 10:51 p.m. right? So Mercury's trine to Saturn, forming a sweet sort of like water trine with Pisces and Cancer, right? Our mind is perfect for blending of feeling and discipline right now, and it allows us to express our deep feelings with remarkable clarity and purpose. It upgrades our emotional intelligence, and with Saturn's organising power helping us to characterize our feelings, and the key benefits of this is to find the right words for complex emotions that we normally struggle to express. We can think more methodically about our family and home matters, build communication bridges against generational divides, transform intuitive hunches into practical plans, but we need to watch out for becoming too inflexible in our emotional conversations, overthinking sensitive matters, setting unrealistic standards for emotional processing, taking criticism too personally. This energy works beautifully for difficult conversations requiring both sensitivity and structure. Mercury's trine to Neptune allows us to, and sort of like creates a psychic highway between our conscious thoughts and our mystical intuitive sort of like realms and thoughts. It allows us to have improved intuitive downloads and insights. We can be more poetic in our communication, and we can communicate in a way that touches our own heart, or other people can touch our hearts and we can touch theirs, and this can resolve and repair relationship friction, as we can be more compassionate in our listening abilities that helps us feel truly heard. It also allows us to have creative inspiration in our artistic and spiritual projects, but we just need to watch out for difficulty in telling the difference between intuition and wishful thinking. Mental fogginess or confusion can come in about practical matters. We can feel emotionally overwhelmed and absorbing others' energy, so make sure you check in and make sure your feelings are your own, and you're just not picking up other people's emotions. Again, Neptune energy can always make us want to escape reality, right? but this energy is good for journaling, visualization, meditating. The crescent moon allows us to take real actions on our ideas if you didn't take them in new moon phase. It helps us to build flow on communication projects, gather resources for our future growth, and see touchable, tangible, realistic progress after initial changes. So you may start seeing the first shoots of change in any habits that you've changed recently. So overall, this week it wants us to think about how we can mix structured thinking with intuitive insights, especially when it comes to our current challenges. What emotional truths are we finally ready to express and face this week with both compassion and clarity? Where in our life could we benefit from expanding our perspective while maintaining focus? What seeds planted during the new moon or any time this week or month are now showing promising signs of growth? What do you need to change, and how can you both honour your mind's logical and mystical aspects, So yeah, this week is a real intuitive week. We have some conflict, some impulsiveness, but ultimately this week's energies, as always, is helping us growth. So yeah, I'm Amani, your holistic karmic astrological life coach, and this has been the weekly scopes from the 22nd to the 28th of June.